Thank you everyone who's joined. I do want to make a note that masks are required at the meeting, and we are waiting on guidance as far as our ability to enforce that with a public meeting. If you're willing to honor that request, we do have people in our midst who are immunocompromised and more vulnerable than the general population. That would be the respectful thing to do. If not, we're going to at some point have to decide whether we can maintain public meetings that are open to the public if people are not willing to follow the current guidance and the policies that we've set into place across FNESU in our school buildings.
We would keep them open to the public.
They would be open to the public, they would be virtual, just to clarify.
Does this count for all communicable diseases?
In the moment, no, it counts specific to COVID, but we're not in any other pandemic that I'm aware of.
Oh, so AIDS is gone, that's good.
Okay.
That's not transmissible by aerosols, but we're really not here to debate. And I do want to remind people that this is unlike town meeting. When we get to our public comment period, it is really just a time for us to hear your thoughts and your concerns. It's not a debate like town meeting is. So, that said, first board business was reorganization to elect a vice chair, but actually that was a misprint. And Emily is our current vice chair, so we do not need to tend to that business. On the consent agenda
You need to welcome Catherine as you move.
oh, right, and I would like to welcome Catherine Barnard, who's our new SU representative from the NMVU district. Hi, Kat. Nice to see you virtually. On our consent agenda, we do have previous minutes. So if there's any discussion, we can do that now, and if not, I need a motion to accept the prior minutes.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, I'll do this by roll. Kat?
Yes.
Emily?
Yes.
Rick?
Aye.
Kevin?
Aye.
Polly?
Aye.
And Mary is an aye. So we're going to, let's see, we're in our preview and prioritization. Lynn, we're thinking about shifting a few things around.
Yeah, I think in order to give time for, can you hear me? Speak up. In order to give time for public comment, I'm going to recommend that we shift the central office spotlight to the September meeting. And we had several things in terms of board work, so I think we could also move the vision, goals, review, and selection under board work until September. And I would like to move the school reopening piece of my agenda up to after the public comment period.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. So given that we are going to move a few of those things to our September meeting, it does give us a little more spaciousness for the public comment. So, Courtney, do you have a list of how many people would like to talk?
Oh, from here?
Well, either in the audience or virtually.
Nobody has said yes virtually.
So no one virtually? Okay.
Can you get a sense if they raise their hand?
Can you raise your hand if you'd like to talk tonight during the public comment window so I can figure out how much time to allocate?
Four? Going once?
Just the four of you?
Yes.
Okay,
Five.
5? 6? Okay. If you, before you do talk, if you could just give me your first and last name, it's just for the record of the meeting. So maybe right before you begin, if you could just share your first and last name with me, that's just helpful for our minutes.
Do we have a microphone set up, Mary? I don't think I told you that. It's right here.
Okay, and there is a microphone set up over here for all of you who'd like to do public comment.
Someone takes 6 people. If we're gonna bump it, to give the 30, it's 5 minutes apiece. That's a long time.
That's quite a long time.
Might want to bump to 20.
Yeah, we have a lot to tend to. Okay,
3
so,
minutes apiece.
we'll do 3 minutes each? Say
Do you
again?
need 5?
You'd like 5?
Okay.
Okay, we'll do 5. We'll set aside 30 minutes. If we finish sooner, great. I really do want to honor your voice here, okay? So, we'll start, whoever would like to go first. And we are setting a timer for 5 minutes.
If you hold that down.
Can everyone hear me okay? My name is Amy Wood, if you need that for the minutes. To say that I am disappointed with the board's decision to blatantly disregard every parent that showed up last week is putting it lightly. Every single parent who's had the courage to stand up in front of you said no to the mask, and we were ignored. Now that you have set the guidance, I have several parts of it to question. Firstly, there is no mask mandate in Vermont. There are recommendations from the state government, the CDC, and the Vermont Agency of Education, but not mandates. Governor Scott himself said in a recent article by V.T. Digger, "I think it's a personal choice. I think you have to do your own risk assessment and then make your own decision." We are no longer under a state of emergency in Vermont. On July 13th, the Vermont Agency of Education issued the following. As of midnight, June 15th, the Vermont state of emergency related to COVID-19 has ended. All Agency of Education guidance issued under the authority of the governor's emergency order has been rescinded as of this same date. I understand new guidance has come out. However, again, there are no mandates in place. You claim in a recent email to me that schools have a duty of care that gives them the authority to force our kids into masks. However, without a state of emergency in place, what danger are you actually protecting them from? The duty of care statute states the following. Each school district and its employees owe its students a duty of ordinary care to prevent the students from being exposed to an unreasonable risk, from which it is foreseeable that an injury is likely to occur. School districts and their employees do not owe their students a duty of immediate supervision at all times and under all circumstances. My healthy children trying to learn without the barrier of a mask on their face is not something that is going to cause anyone an unreasonable risk of injury, and you have no way to prove that it will. I am a responsible person. I keep my kids home if they're sick. We wash our hands. We clean things, those common sense things we should all be doing. If you intend to use this duty of care rule to discipline or exclude my children from the education they have a right to, you need to prove that they're actually a risk, and that burden of proof is on you. I also wonder how are fully vaccinated high school students a risk if this vaccine works so well? Do you know how many kids in Vermont have died from COVID or ended up in the ICU? According to the Vermont Department of Health, as of today, there have been 0 COVID deaths for children in Vermont, and that's for the entire pandemic. In fact, for ages 0 to 29, there are no deaths even. And as of Tuesday, Health Commissioner Mark Levine reported that there are no children currently in the hospital in Vermont. So again, I must ask you, what is your unreasonable risk that gives you legal grounds to claim you are following the duty of care statute? It also says that duty of care does not have to be applied under all circumstances. And it's really confusing to me how you could try to use that against our children who just want to be able to learn and concentrate fully and freely. And doesn't duty of care also mean that you look out for their emotional and mental well-being? That you should be protecting them from unreasonable risks to that? Or are you conveniently forgetting that part? You say that you are following guidance from the Agency of Education. I have read through that document myself several times, and nowhere in there does it say you can deny a child his or her right to an education if they refuse a mask. My children cannot focus like normal and learn to their full potential when they are required to wear a mask. It makes them feel anxious, it makes it difficult to breathe, and they're constantly having to adjust it on their face, which further interrupts their learning. So based on this statement, pulled from the guidance that you all are swearing by, my kids should not be having to wear a mask while they're trying to learn. And besides my own kids, I know I'm not alone in being worried about all of our children. What about kids who are supposed to wear glasses and can't because the masks interfere? How can they learn if they can't see? Kids are losing out on the communication and learning that is achieved through facial expressions. Or for what about kids with hearing difficulties? Maybe they've learned to read lips. Where does this mask mandate leave them? It seems to me that you are only concerned about and catering to one sector of parents, the ones who think it's okay to force this upon students who do not want it, and you don't have concern for the rest. No concern for those kids who are losing out on a complete education because they cannot, for whatever reason, wear a mask. Not allowing a child to get the education that they have a right to is discrimination. You suggested to me in an email that students who refuse will be treated the same as any other student who disrupts the learning environment, and that student would be disciplined like any other student breaking the rules, up to including exclusion. So in other words, you are willing to kick kids out over this. And not just from school, from field trips, sporting events, and more. Any student who is standing up for his or her rights to be able to learn freely is not someone who is being disruptive, and the fact that this board would even suggest that makes me sick to my stomach. You said that students who claim medical, medical or religious exemptions would be evaluated by medical personnel, special educators, school nurses, and so on, and then a decision would be made whether to give them accommodations, an exemption, or to place them in a virtual learning environment. And I have a sinking feeling that going virtual is going to end up being your answer 10 times out of 10. Virtual learning does not give kids the full educational experience that they have a right to. And for many kids, virtual learning over these past 2 years has been a huge struggle, and their grades reflect that. I've watched my own kids struggle through it and watch their grades along with their self-esteem fall. Making a kid go virtual who can not learn well that way certainly is not looking out for the best interests of that student. Section 2, Title 16 of the Vermont Education Law states the following: the right to a public education is integral to Vermont's constitutional form of government and its guarantees of political and civil rights. Further, the right to education is fundamental for the success of Vermont's children in a rapidly changing society and global marketplace, as well as for the state's own economic and social prosperity. It further states, to keep Vermont's democracy competitive and thriving, Vermont students must be afforded substantially equal access to a basic quality education. So I must ask, how is virtual learning providing a substantial equal educational opportunities to all students, especially when history shows that many students struggle while trying to work in a virtual learning environment? Does that sound substantially equal to you? Not to me. You said that the policies are in place are similar to what we see in hospitals, public transportation, and so on. And I disagree. The public transportation mask mandate never ended. It did for schools, and comparing schools to hospitals they're just not comparable. Your reopening plan also mentions vaccine clinics will be happening. If you are so concerned about the safety of our children, I must ask, how smart is it to invite the public in to be vaccinated like that? You also mentioned testing for students and teachers. It says voluntary, but for how long? Will mandatory vaccines be the next thing that you try to push on our children? Will you be getting written consent from the parents for these test and vaccine clinics? And I can't help but wonder, how will kids, especially the younger ones, feel about having that many disruptions going on while they are trying to learn? This goes back to the duty of care and taking care of all students' needs, including emotional and mental well-being. A school building is for learning, not for administering vaccines and medical testing. And why did parents not get the chance to vote on having these things take place within our school buildings? The bottom line is we cannot keep our kids in masks forever. Kids go into other places, such as restaurants, grocery stores, and other places in town and don't have to wear a mask. So I fail to understand what sense it makes to mandate it in schools. You are turning school, what should be a fun and positive experience, into an absolutely miserable experience for many students. You are negatively affecting kids' social, emotional, and mental well-being, and you are not allowing children their right to a full education, and some of us have had enough. You don't get to make medical decisions for my kids. A school board that ignores what parents' concerns, the parents who made the effort to show up and stick up for our students' rights, is not a school board that I want representing my community and my children. We have rights as parents, and we want answers. We're not just going to quietly go away and give up if that is what you're hoping for. The data shows there is not an unreasonable risk to our students. I know that, you cannot just send our students into a virtual learning environment for a third year because doing so is not giving them equal opportunity. I know that's what you would probably like to do, to just get rid of us and our kids, but we're here today to say that we're no more. We've had enough. We pay taxes, we pay salaries, and you work for us, not the other way around. And remember that when people vote again.
I originally didn't plan on speaking because I know you guys aren't going to listen to what I say nor take it in. But I'm going to say it anyway. What's your name, sir? My name is Spencer Lemons, for your record. So, we always teach body sovereignty. My body, my choice. I guess that only applies when we're murdering babies and not when it comes to our children's right to their own body to make a decision for what they want to breathe and act and how they feel. I understand that people are immunocompromised. My family is. But with that said, you can't make everyone else do something that makes you feel better. You have an inherent risk when you walk out the door and work a day-to-day life, and that inherent risk is yours to take. If you want to have your vaccine and you want to have your chance of limiting or reducing your chance of death, that's okay. If I want to have the choice not to and have a 99.97% chance of survival, that's okay too. But for you to tell me or my children that they have to wear a mask so that you or grandma doesn't get sick, that's an inherent risk for you and an inherent risk for us, and that is our liberty to do as we choose with our body and our sovereignty.
Can you hear me?
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Chelsea Gilbert.
Chelsea.
Good evening. I stand here again this week to continue the fight for our kids, for their basic human and educational rights. I never thought in 2021 I would have to do this. A quote from Indira Gandhi: "We must protect our families, we must protect our children who have inalienable rights and should be loved, should be taken care of physically and mentally, and should not be brought into the world only to suffer. I have a divine right to protect my children, and I will not stop until I know they are safe. I do not take kindly to threats against our children. Expelling because of a mask refusal is a threat. You are willing to discriminate against our children over an absurd recommendation from the AOE. Delta has been here all summer while kids have been unmasked in schools at camp. Although Delta can't even be detected on the current COVID test. The flu is more dangerous to our children than COVID, yet we've never masked before. Nothing has changed since June when the state of emergency was lifted. The Vermont Digger asked Ted Fisher what schools could or couldn't do in regards to masks. Ted Fisher responded saying, "Schools should recommend but not require mask use by unvaccinated students and staff." This was in regards to the last few days of school, not summer. In that same article, Lynn Coda stated, Secretary French has now clarified that we can only recommend masks for unvaccinated individuals, not require them. You cannot say one thing and do another because I keep the receipts. You can't keep contradicting yourselves. That is how you have lost credibility and confidence. You clearly stated to a news agency that schools can't require masks, yet here we are. I understand schools have a duty of care. You are completely neglecting your duty of care responsibility in regards to mental and emotional health. If we are in such a dire situation, the state of emergency would be reinstated and we would be full remote. You know it and I know it. Last week, a board member mentioned that schools follow guidance for everything such as head lice. Kids are sent home and parents get to decide on which medical or non-medical treatment they will use to treat the legs. The same mindset should be used for masks. Parents decide whether or not their child needs one. I have to give permission to the school for my child to get Tylenol, so my permission needs to be required for a mask. If a parent is that scared or a child is that immune compromised, perhaps that child shouldn't be at school. This board has made it very clear that they're only concerned about one sector of parents and children. I get it. It's a big club and we're not in it. You have completely ignored my daughter's vision issues and my other daughter's severe panic attacks. This is unacceptable and the result will be irreversible psychological trauma. I have a degree in psychology. Do you? These kids will be scarred for the rest of their lives because this board doesn't have the backbone to stand up for our kids. Did you know masks for the general public are considered emergency use authorization, or EUAs? Do you realize that an EUA can't be required without consent? The only person that can consent for my children is me. Requiring an EUA without consent is against the law, period. I do not consent for my children, for this medical treatment for my children. Even doctors need my signature for medical decisions. If this board thinks they have more medical authority than a parent over a child, you are very wrong. The guidance also says that masks can be removed for instructional purposes. So the moment a child is in their classroom, the mask should come off for instruction. This board doesn't have the legal basis that they seem to believe. There is not a federal or state law that has gone through the House and Senate that requires masks. Laws are laws, laws have consequences. The words mandate, required, mandatory, requested, order, ordinance, and decree are not laws and can be challenged at every level. The only thing we legally have to abide by is an actual law. In 1969, the U.S. Supreme Court ordered that students do not shed their constitutional right of freedom of speech and expression at the schoolhouse gate. These mask requirements also violate their freedom of expression and civil rights. As parents, we have the right to appeal a school board decision. We would like to appeal the mask requirement decision. We deserve a say, and this should be voted on by people that care enough to show up here. I do not consent, and we will not comply. I'm done with the tyranny at every level. This entire state, sadly, down to our local school board, is on a power trip, and this is an abuse of power. Parents and only parents have the right to make medical decisions for their children. We will not allow a school board to abuse our children emotionally and mentally anymore. Lynn should not have sole authority to make decisions for hundreds of kids that she doesn't even know. You don't know their needs, we do. Again, we are requesting the immediate appeal of mask requirements. The hypocrisy of the past 18 months should make everyone question the motives of every elected official. I will be able to tell my children that I did not stay silent.
Hey, I'm Zach Messier. You guys are either cowards or you're ignorant, and I hope it's the former. You are following false numbers and playing right into the compromised media. One example being the recommendation/decree to muzzle our children, with a mask that explicitly says on the side of the box, not effective for use of COVID-19. Dr. Fauci has said that it is not effective as well, since how you guys seem to love him so much. What about the 98% survival rates that I mentioned last week? How about the fact that kids have little to no, absolutely no transmission rates? Lynn, last week you stated that last week you stated parents have contacted you to support the mask. I asked you, where were they? Why can't they show up like we do? Now I hear you're telling parents non-compliance will result in disciplinary action. Lynn, I'm here to tell you that this is America, not communist China or Nazi Germany. Did you guys know that you are freaking out over a cold that cannot even be isolated in a lab? Last week you stated that when we reach a 90% vaccination rate, that you will lift restrictions. Explain to me how will you achieve this? Most of whom are unvaccinated at this point will not accept this poison. Next, explain kids under 12. They cannot get this poison. So what, are they screwed until junior high? You people have had my kid so scared last year to even be seen in public without a mask that he would not ride in a car with me. And this is among the many reasons why my child will no longer be subject to your Marxist communist ways. This this has liberated me to come and speak my mind without worry of repercussions on my child. If you do not do what's right, you will see me and all these other parents at every single meeting until this changes. You are voted out. If the superintendent cannot conform or yield to the will of the parents, I demand a vote for no confidence.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Sarah Simpson. Sarah Stimson. Just to take the politicals out of this, anyone out there can tell me what our end game is with the COVID-19. What is the magic formula that's going to allow us to sound the all clear? Is it 0 cases? The only way that'll happen is if we just stop testing and stop reporting. Is it a vaccine? It took 25 years for the chickenpox vaccine to be developed. The smallpox inoculation was discovered in 1796, and the last known natural case was in 1977. We have a flu vaccine that is only 40 to 60% effective, and less than half of the US population chooses to get one. And roughly 20,000 Americans die of the flu or of flu complications. Oh, you'll mandate it, like other vaccines are mandated in order to attend school, travel to some other foreign countries, etc. We already have a growing number of anti-vaxxers refusing proven, tested, well-known vaccines that have been administered for decades but aren't necessarily safe. You really think people will flock to get fast-tracked, quicker tested vaccines whose long-term side effects and overall efficacy are anyone's best guess? How long are we going to cancel and postpone and reconsider? You aren't doing in-person school until second quarter. What if October's numbers aren't the same as August? We move football to spring. What if March's numbers are worse than this one? I understand COVID can be deadly or very dangerous to some people, but so aren't strawberries and shellfish. We take risks multiple times a day without a second thought. We know driving a car can be dangerous, but we don't leave it in the garage. Many speed and don't wear seatbelts. Is hugging grandma really more dangerous than rush hour on the freeway? Is going out with a friend after work more risky than 4-day-old gas station sushi or operating a chainsaw? When and how did we decide so quickly to lose our free will and give up our liberty? Is there a waiver somewhere that I can sign? I understand the risks, but I choose life with hugs and smiles and go to the state fair and church and go and hug my mom in her retirement home. I understand that there is a minuscule possibility I could die, but I previously have had the virus and was sick for 2 weeks and I recovered from it. I understand I could possibly pass it to someone else if I'm not careful, but I can pass any virus on to someone. I am struggling to see where or how this ends. Either we get busy living or we get busy dying. I am a registered nurse. I work in a nursing home. This is insane. We aren't helping these people. These people are dying from loneliness and depression because they're not walking, because they're not getting fresh air. And now you're going to mask little children who aren't even going to be affected by this? If you are sick, stay home. The good thing about people that aren't vaccinated is that they know when they are having symptoms. This is insane. You will not put a mask on my child.
Yeah.
Hello, my name is John Brizzi. I live in Shelton, Vermont. Got 4 kids that go to the school there. I don't have a whole thing to read here, I just have some notes, so if I go all over the place, sorry. But a lot of the stuff I'm going to say has been repeated already, and I'm sure you've all heard it a million times, and I get it. One of the biggest things somebody mentioned, we pay taxes. I'm disappointed I was never even asked or given a survey or anything to at least go over this with somebody and be like, hey, what do people think? I'd love to hear if every parent got a chance to give a survey. I'd like to know what the numbers would be. If people would agree with me or agree with them, and that's fine. Everybody has a different opinion, but it'd be at least nice to know. If I paid $5,000 in taxes for my house, it'd be cool to at least know that since most of it's going to the school, I could have a say. I have no problem with people want to wear masks. I have no problem with people want to get vaccinated, do whatever you want. One of my kids I'm going to focus on is only 7 years old. Like I said, I have 4, but I'm going to focus on my little one, Ryder. Kindergarten was stolen from him when this thing started. He'll never get that back. Then first grade was last year. He had to wear a mask every day. Comes home every day, Dad, why do I got to wear this stupid thing? It's disgusting. He actually got a rash on his face. It's gross. We all know these kids are going to the bathroom. They're touching their mask all day, picking it up, putting it down. Any teacher in the school knows this. Throwing it on the table. And it's disgusting. There's no nice way to say it. It's just gross. I wear it to work, and it's gross. But once again, I understand if you want to wear it, go ahead. But I hate hearing from my 7-year-old after he got kindergarten taken, first grade ruined, and now second grade he's going to start, and now that's going to be ruined. Today he comes up to me, I'm working out, he literally walks in and goes, Dad, do I really have to wear this thing at school again? I'm like, yeah, it looks that way. I'm going to go talk tonight, but I don't know if it's going to change anything, but at least going to talk. He hates the mask, he asks us about it, his attitude towards school at 7 has already changed dramatically, and I hate that. I hate that he used to be so excited to go to school. Kids have these relationships with their teachers, you guys should know that. They want to see their teacher smile. They want to see the kids next door laughing at the table. Everyone just wants to be able to socialize. And when that's taken away from them, it kills the ability to love school, to have a relationship with your teacher, to just their mental health. I can't even imagine how this is affecting them, because if it doesn't stop, and now he's in 3rd grade, it's all he knows. Since he started school, it's all he knows. And we're at the same time, we're teaching these kids to be afraid all the time that they're going to get sick. They're wearing a mask every day. Do they have to be afraid all the time they're going to be sick? I mean, people get sick. Someone else mentioned it before. 2017 to 2019, 300 kids died of the flu. Did anybody ask for masks? I didn't. I don't think anybody did. Nobody did. If anyone knows what Johns Hopkins is, it's one of the most respected universities on the planet, not just America, all over the world. They did a study recently, you can look it up. I've heard this from many people, so I went ahead and just looked it up myself. I'm not into conspiracies and all this crap. I just went and looked it up myself. And it's in the Wall Street Journal, it's in other places, but they're unbelievably respected. We did a study of over 48,000 kids that had COVID, and the mortality rate was 0. Not one of the kids died. Our governor, who I respect very much, we get 80%, and just like he said, he's like, we're going to lift it, whether you're vaccinated or not. Nobody has to wear them anymore. Great. As of yesterday on CAX, they're like, I didn't know this. They're like, now we're at 85%, so we're doing even better. But we're still wearing these masks. I'm not trying to argue with people, I just don't understand. If we're literally at 85%, which is 5% more than when we didn't need to wear it, why are we still wearing them? I don't get it. Out of all the kids, out of the entire country, I think they say 300 something died from COVID, but no one explains if those kids have major problems, heart conditions, leukemia, obesity, heart disease, whatever it is. They just assume that they all died right from that. I don't know what they did, but what I'm saying is it's not much different than the flu. And no one's ever, and that's been around forever, has ever asked to wear a mask during the flu, ever. We also know recently, and I didn't know this either, is that based on vaccinated or not vaccinated, you can still get COVID, you can still get Delta, you can still spread Delta. I was trying to read up, like, okay, I actually took the time to say, if I get it and I'm not vaccinated, or that person is vaccinated, whatever, am I going to be able to give it to somebody stronger than the other person? And the answer is no. The CDC just came out and said the amount of, which I never heard this term before, so I looked it up, the viral load in your nasopharynx is actually the same whether you're vaccinated or not. So we have these kids sitting in class who literally have no chance of dying, because in Vermont, there's literally not one case. Because they go to the news and I see all these, they're like, oh, hospital beds are overrun and kids are dying. So I'm like, all right, well, I'll just look it up. So I'm like, maybe there's kids dying. I don't know about it. Maybe if a kid in my son's class was out in the hospital and he died, I'd be like, oh crap, this is serious. Let's do it. Nobody's dying. I was actually surprised to see that no kids are hospitalized and no kids are dying. I didn't know that. So I'm like, I'm afraid of my kid getting something that's not going to hurt him any more than the flu. And everyone says, well, what if they bring it home and give it to somebody else? Well, that person is vaccinated. Are you saying the vaccination doesn't work? It's very confusing. So I'm not, like I said, if you want to do whatever you want, go ahead. If your kid is over there, you want him to wear a mask, clearly that means you're someone that believes these masks are actually stopping the virus. So if you actually believe that, your kid should be safe with the mask. If you're so concerned, again, still, that you need my kid to wear it, because the 2 masks will make it somehow better, then your kid can double mask. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not being disrespectful. I'm not arguing. If anybody has immunocompromised, I get it. If my kid had major conditions, I'd keep him home remote. I'd keep him home with my wife as a teacher. I would do certain things for him. I wouldn't expect every kid to change his learning ability and everything that's happening to him based on my kid who has a 99.9% chance of being fine from this. I just don't get it. So, like I said, I'm not going to keep going. I just feel like everything we're doing is just in case. So when you look at the numbers and literally no kids are sick, no one's bringing it home and killing anybody. If that was happening, like my kids are on hockey, I get phone calls during hockey season. This kid was, they don't tell you the name, some kid during it got COVID, so everybody has to shut down and go do tests. We all do it, that's fine. If the story came out the next day that, holy crap, that kid went to the hospital and he's dying, I'd be like, okay, let's take this serious.
We're running over, so.
Oh, okay, last thing. Okay, my last thing, sorry, I didn't know I was speaking. I'm sorry. My last thing was just that it seems like my main theme here is everything we're doing is just in case. So if we could just switch our thinking, so instead of just in case these kids get something that they're not going to die from, how about we switch our thinking and say, just in case it ruins their mental health, just in case it ruins their social skills, just in case it ruins their education or ability to love school. Thank you.
Okay,
So I think you have,
how many? And is there anyone else? Okay, we're going to go to a 3-minute at this point because I let everyone go well over. But that's fine. Yes, please come on down. I'm just going to try to move us along. We have a lot of board business to tend to tonight outside of this discussion.
do you want me to write the other names down for you?
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. And if you could just state your name before you start. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Michelle.
And a last name, Michelle.
Helms?
Thank you.
Yeah. So I'm a parent of a child that goes to Bakersfield School. I have tons of research that I could bring to you regarding efficacy on masks, but I think we're beyond that. I think we're pretty much going towards whatever the Vermont Health Department says. Excuse me, I'm really nervous. I don't talk in crowds. But if this responsibility has been placed upon our superintendent and not on the Vermont Health Department, I would have thought that our superintendent would have turned to the community to see what we would have wanted to do for our kids. I'm really kind of disappointed in that we weren't able to give a say in that. There are many states that are way less vaccinated than what we are, and they have opened their schools to choice. And then if we look at the flu cases, which I heard somebody else state as well, 2012 to 2013, there was 1,100 deaths of children between the ages of 0 and 17. We did not mask our children at that time. I have 4, and my youngest is in school right now. In 2017 to 2018, we had over 600 deaths from the flu. This is all on the CDC website. Also, last year, at the end of the year, my son suffered from severe sinus infection. I truly believe it was because of the masks. He was sitting at his desk, and he took his mask off, and he was 6 feet away from everybody else. And he was told by his teacher that he had to put his mask back on. Fortunately, that day, he had his blanket with him at school, and so he took his blanket and he wrapped it around his head. And he just sat there under his blanket saying, I can't put my mask on. It is soaked with boogers. And his teacher said to him, I'm sorry, Skylar, you have to put your mask on. You're putting your fellow classmates at risk. I think this is abusive. I think it is just ridiculous, the type of message that we're sending to our children, that they are a risk to their classmates. And it just breaks my heart that he missed the last 2 weeks of school because he couldn't attend because he had too much sinus leakage, I guess you would call it, but he couldn't wear a mask every day, and I wasn't going to force him to. I mean, if this is caring for our children, I really don't think that we should be attending schools that are advocating that our children are viruses and that they're putting their classmates at risk. The kind of mentality that is beyond belief. And with the amount of cases, we had 0 to 17 age group And we lost nobody to COVID last year in Vermont, from what I understand of the numbers. We had lost way more to the flu. 400, I think it was over 434 flu cases last year that were diagnosed with death, and we had under that in COVID cases in the whole state, or in the whole country of COVID deaths. So I hope that we can turn this around and make it a school choice. I really hope that, you know, if it's placed into the responsibility of our superintendent, and that the Vermont Health Department is saying that is her choice, that she would turn to her community and take a vote and see what we can do together. Thank you.
I'm only able to give you 2 minutes.
No, that's fine.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Christy Thresher. First, I just wanted to start off with some mask filtrations statistics. So the surgical masks, the blue ones that most of us are wearing here, provide only 45 to 55% filtration. So you're a little over half protected. The cloth masks that you guys provide at the school are anywhere from 25 to 38% effective. That does not seem like that's a reason for us to wear the cloth mask. That's obviously not going to work. You guys are using that as an excuse. This is a political move. We understand. You guys do not want to get sued, but you need to leave that up to the parents. My children, those 5 up there, used to love school. They would come home every day excited to tell me how their day went, tell me what happened, what their friends did, what their teachers did. Every single one of them hates school. They don't want to go anymore. My little one, he had a rash so severe last year from all of the sanitizing that he had that his hands were cut and bleeding. When I brought this up to the school, they used wipes for 1 day and then told him that he had to go back to sanitizing his hands regardless, and that if he couldn't, he had to stay home. He also had a rash on his face from his mask. My oldest twin, he has anxiety because of it. It took me the entire summer to get him to go outside in public without a mask on. And now that he's finally comfortable and not anxious, he has to go back to school wearing a damn mask. My children will not be attending school this year if they have to wear masks. And I hope that there are parents out here who agree with that and do not send your children to school and make them change their decision.
Never bow.
That's it.
I missed your name at the beginning.
Christy Thresher.
Can you spell your last name for me, Christy?
Thresher.
You gotta get it to the door knob.
Thank you. All right, we have a couple people via Zoom who would like to talk. Nicole Jacobs. Nicole, I'm only able to give you 2 minutes at this point. We're well over our allotted time.
That's okay. I have more of a couple of questions versus comments. I was just wondering, I missed the last meeting and I didn't see if the number percentage was figured up on how many kids were actually vaccinated, or adults too, I guess, in the school, if we've reached that 80% yet or not, and where we are with that, if that's still going to be the factor. I was also wondering, like, what is the consequence going to be if kids don't wear the masks as they're being asked to, and how long it's going to be before they don't have to anymore? Like, what's the point of ending it?
Thanks, Nicole. I think that if it's okay with you, we'll punt that to Lynn's part, and she'll be able to speak to those questions if that's okay with you.
Yep, that's fine. And, you know, I was also wondering too, like at the end of last year, I had to keep my son home a few times because his classroom was extremely hot and he was having a difficult time with having the mask on his face, never mind the heat in the room. And I'm just wondering, like, am I gonna have to do that again to start the school year? Because, you know, he's hoping to go back to school, but not to be in that situation again. So I don't know what to do in that aspect.
Do you want to speak to that?
I think we keep going.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Nicole. Marcia?
Yeah, I just had a question basically. And first of all, I just want to say, you know, I know this is a difficult decision, and hats off to what all of our educators have been going through for the last 2 years. So my question is just, and I understand that this is a very difficult decision, and in, you know, the law, you know, getting sued and things like that. But if you are truly, as a school board and supervisory union, representing us, how can you not take a vote and let us be a democracy? That's my question. Thank you.
And Leah? Leah, do you want to speak? Is she no longer? Okay, so she is not interested in talking.
So you do have people that joined the meeting late. I don't know if any of them were intending to speak or not.
Is that the chat?
So you might need to say it again so that they can hear you.
So if there are any final people virtually, and I have one more audience member, but is there anyone else virtually who wanted to comment? Going once? Going twice, okay.
Hi, my name is Marlene Hambleton, and I just wanted to say thank you for following the CDC guidelines. I appreciate it. I have a play school child who's going to be starting school in Montgomery. And I don't know if you guys are aware of this or not, but there was 94,000 children last week who tested positive for COVID in the United States. So there's a huge uptick in it being advanced towards kids. And I don't see how we can get it back to 80% for our building if our building is middle school plus elementary, because there's way more kids in the elementary section that aren't 12 and can't be vaccinated. So thank you for following the guidelines. I personally would not send my preschooler, play schooler to school without it being a mask mandate for everybody. If this were a high school, that would be a different situation, but it's not. It's my 3-year-old who had COVID last year and was covered head to toe in a miserable rash, fever for 7 days. Some people say it's the flu. It was not like the flu for my 3-year-old. It was miserable, and I don't want to have to go through that again. So for people who can have their kids vaccinated and they're in a school where everybody is basically has that option to do that, then I think you can take a vote on that. But if you're in a place where not everybody has the option, there's no vote. You go with the most vulnerable person in the building. And those are people that are under 12 and not vaccinated. So thank you for doing what I consider to be the right thing. I don't see it as political. I see it as a health issue. Thank you.
But the flu's gone, right?
We are not going to be heckling people of opposing opinions. No one did that to you when you were speaking. Please be civil.
I'm sorry, we didn't, bow down to.
I'm not asking anyone to bow down. I'm asking you to be civil and kind. I'm listening really intently. I went many minutes over for multiple of you. Let you finish. I am really, I am truly listening. I hear you. Well,
You're gonna do what you're gonna do regardless.
Okay, we're going to move on. I really do appreciate you bringing your impassioned pleas to us. I really do hear you. I understand this is a really difficult conversation, and it's really polarizing.
Actually, can I speak real quick? I'll speak from right here, because I can speak loud.
Can you tell me your name?
Samantha McKenzie.
Okay.
I have a daughter that was kept out of school multiple times last year over a running nose because I went to get her COVID test and had it shoved up her brain. She's always been known to have runny nose in the mornings, but they still use that as an excuse to send her home, which is fine. But this year, like, she's special needs, and I don't feel that she needs to be wearing a mask. And yes, she has an immune problem, but if I really want her, if I'm worried about her safety, I will keep her home. Because I don't think everybody else's child should have to suffer. Because I have 2 other kids that also are suffering wearing these masks.
Yeah.
All right. So we are going to move on. Thank you all. You are welcome to email me.
You don't reply to our emails. Neither you, they don't want to.
I've not received a single email.
Okay, I remember emailing you guys at the beginning of the summer trying to look at opening this supposed to be on the school board, but I did not receive an email back. And I also emailed Lynn about some other issues too, and she never replied back either. And I know about the unfair for this problem.
Sorry, they didn't give your tax out of there.
Yeah, I know.
If you email me, I will reply to you.
And now that we make a big deal about it, and it's like at the beginning of the year, I wanted to take the open position, and not a single one of you would email back.
I never got the email. I cannot speak for others. If you email me, I will absolutely email you back. I'm happy to talk with you on the phone at any point. Absolutely. So we're going to move on to you.
So at this point, we're going to move my school reopening plan discussion, or the school reopening update discussion, to this point in the meeting. So as you all know, I released the plan on Friday. We definitely have heard from several community members about their discontent with the plan. I have also heard from other community members that with a sense of relief for the plan, and it has definitely been challenging to navigate through this. I will tell you that as an educational leader, my background is not in public health. So when I am making these decisions, my strategy has been to rely on the expertise of those whose backgrounds are in public health. So one of the things that I've done is to communicate with and consult with other medical experts. And tonight I have actually asked for there to be some medical experts available to just talk with the board about reopening and what we should be thinking through in terms of the start of the school year. So I would like to, at this point, introduce Dr. Rebecca Bell, who is joining us virtually. Dr. Bell is a pediatric critical care physician at the University of Vermont Children's Hospital. She's also an associate professor of pediatrics at the Lerner College of Medicine at UVM. She's the president of the Vermont chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics. So I'm going to turn it over to you. Welcome, Dr. Bell.
Thank you very much for having me. And I am really here speaking on behalf of Vermont pediatricians across the state as the president of AAP Vermont. And we have been involved really, we often are involved in school health pre-COVID, but have been heavily involved in assisting both the health department, the maternal child health division within the health department, schools, school nurses throughout the pandemic, and continue to do so. And we've made recommendations in conjunction with the health department and our own recommendations around school reopening. We're working really closely with school nurses about how to navigate this. And I think, the bottom line is I think we can have a good year here in Vermont. As we just heard, there's a lot of questions and concerns about masking. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we came to that decision and where that comes from. So to start with, I want to just share that our overarching goal here as pediatricians is to prioritize in-person learning. Our huge concern last year and since the start of the pandemic was the inconsistencies that the pandemic caused in children's learning and not being present in school. And so we really feel like our goal is to get students full-time in person with minimal disruption. So with minimal school closures, minimal school absent days. So in order to do that, as we were, through the summer approaching the fall, sort of looking back at some of the guidelines from last year and what was sort of precluding everyone getting into the building. And so the big thing really was the distancing piece of things. So with the distance requirements in schools, especially in the high school setting, many schools couldn't accommodate those distancing rules. And so because we feel so strongly that we really want students in person, we felt like the benefits of, getting everyone in person were greater than the risks in terms of we can minimize and get rid of the strict distancing requirements as long as we had other mitigation measures in place. And I just want to pause for a moment and say, I think we all have the same shared goal here. I think every one of us, I'm a parent as well, but I think we all want students in school. We want them to have a normal school year. We want them to be able to be with their teachers and be with their friends. And we really want to minimize disruptions. And that our plan and our policy and our guidelines come from that goal, which I think everyone on this call and in that room shares. So in order to, we are recommending though that we pay attention to mealtime when kids are unmasked and making sure that people are sort of spaced out then. But otherwise we don't recommend doing a hybrid model in order to have fewer people in the building. We really think it's important for kids to have consistent school. So what other things did we feel like we did last year? We had a whole year of experience with COVID that we felt like maybe didn't help as much. One would be the screening at the door, the entryway, and instead feel like continuing with the same staying home when sick policy. And we're working really closely with school nurses on what that looks like. Changing up the protocol a bit to allow for those who are vaccinated to get back to school sooner if they're symptomatic or have a COVID exposure. And so we feel like that piece is more effective than doing the screenings. In terms of cleaning, for instance, that was a big thing that schools poured a lot of resources into early on when we were thinking there might be significant transmission through fomites, so through surfaces. And found earlier on in the pandemic that really wasn't the case. This was really spread via respiratory droplets. And so really feeling we don't need to do any special cleaning in the school. But going back to transmission, this is a virus that spreads through respiratory droplets, through your mouth and through your nose. And so when that, the first month or two into the pandemic, when that really became, okay, this is the primary mode of transmission and masking was recommended, to really get at that, where the virus lives and where the virus can spread. I know for folks that was, a year and a half ago, that was really a new recommendation and a new thing that people were just not used to doing. And I really empathize with people, in the healthcare field, we wear masks all the time, all day long, even pre-COVID. But I understood that for a lot of people, there were concerns like, is this going to affect my health? How is it safe for me to wear a mask all day? Is it safe for kids to wear a mask? Is it going to affect their development? And now it's it's been about a year and a half later, and we've had really good results with mask wearing. So we know that kids really tolerate it, students tolerate it. There's a very strong correlation, as you can imagine, with parental attitude about masks and student attitude about masks. So, but the majority of parents and the majority of students just say, yep, it's just something we do. It's not a big deal. And sort of move on from that. Certainly if they're being told by, their caregivers that masks are terrible or dangerous or harmful, then they're going to have different attitudes towards masking. But generally it's really well tolerated. And we know, of course, in a lab, when we put a mask on someone, we see that the respiratory viruses, respiratory droplets don't spread. But the other question was, yeah, but that's in a lab. Like, would this really work in a school? Like, does this actually make a difference in a school? And what we found last year through contact tracing in partnership with the health department is that we had really very little transmission of COVID-19 within the school environment. So when students were masked, when they're in the school environment, although we tried to minimize having anyone with COVID come into the school, it happened, right? We have like the numbers of times a student or a teacher or staff member came into the school building with COVID. We know how often it was transmitted. This was pre the more transmissible Delta variant. But schools were not a place that drove transmission of the virus. It was informal settings where people were unmasked. So in homes, in gatherings, and people weren't wearing masks and they were close together. That's where the virus was transmitting, not so much in schools. And so we have both sort of the laboratory data, but then we have this real world experience in Vermont where we did pretty well last year in terms of really minimizing a pretty infectious virus from spreading within our school walls. And so thinking about that, that is something we want to continue doing. We were doing it, up through the spring. I know, in the childcare setting, my kids are in childcare. They just continue to mask. And I know that for some settings over the summer, some camps did different things, some school settings did different things. But now that we have more evidence, we know more about Delta and the fact that this is much more transmissible. It makes sense to continue what we were doing in the spring, which is everyone was wearing a mask. We'll continue that in the fall. The other thing that the mask provided was minimizing transmission of other respiratory viral infections. So we did not see influenza last year at all. We did not see respiratory syncytial virus at all. And the problem with those viruses is that they usually go through schools like crazy. Kids can get really sick from it. They end up in the hospital. Also, in the time of COVID, those symptoms look like COVID. And so if you have an outbreak of RSV or influenza within the school, those students are having to stay home. They're getting sick. They're not feeling well. They're having to get tested and then missing a lot of school. And again, our shared goal here is not just to get kids in the door the first day of school, but to keep them safe and to keep them in school and not have a ton of absent days. So thinking about what are the things that actually really helps reduce transmission of COVID-19 within the school, reduce transmission of other respiratory viruses that are going to keep kids out of school. And so that is why we recommend universal masking. And it's really in line with what, every other public health organization, medical organization from the national organizations, which I know some people say those are national, they're not really looking at Vermont, but AEP Vermont, and then of course the Agency of Education and the Vermont Department of Health. So this is there is broad consensus that universal masking makes sense. It will help minimize disruptions. It'll help keep kids in school. And I think, I heard a lot from parents now about what the end is. And I just want to reassure folks that, part of what we need to keep in mind here is that there are people in our community, and they are all children under 12 years of age who have not yet had the opportunity to be vaccinated. And so we really think that folks need to be masked while we're waiting for that population to have the opportunity to be vaccinated. I hear from parents all the time who are just waiting for that vaccine to be available to their child, and they need to be able to go to school and access their public education and feel safe doing so. And so we really think that getting everyone in the building will really help with minimizing social isolation, minimizing some of the mental health crises that we're seeing that went along with a lot of school being interrupted because of being sick or having to quarantine. The other thing I just wanted to mention is this metric that I did just hear a bunch of that it is a little bit disheartening to hear, and that is like the metric of child death. And that's not a metric I would use at all. So, you know, I'm a pediatric intensive care doctor. I unfortunately deal with a lot of child death, and it's never easy and it's never okay. And this is a vaccine preventable infection. And that makes these deaths that are happening across the country really hard. And so thinking about parents of kids who are unvaccinated and are waiting for the vaccine.
Excuse me, Zach, please.
This lady's funded by Pfizer.
Please, you may not interrupt. Please do not interrupt.
Don't interrupt even though you paid her. Yeah.
Hey, listen, folks.
So we wanted us to speak first so we can't rebut any of this. Garbage that is essentially.
Okay, so I'm just gonna say that nothing I've heard has been based on fact at all.
There was a lot of feeling. A lot of feeling.
Okay, folks, listen. This is not your time to speak. You have,
This is our time. We pay the taxes. This is our building.
You work.
This is us. You work for us. Whether you're voted or not, you can be recalled. You can be taken out.
Okay, we're gonna take a pause if you cannot stop screaming at me.
I am not screaming at you, but you are wrong and offensive to liberty and justice. Goodbye. Our kids are out of your school system, and be lucky if you get your tax dollars coming try to get me. Let's go.
I wish you well.
No, you don't.
I would like to have our physician continue. If you do not feel able to sit here and listen, now is your chance to leave, please.
Yeah, keep feeding the propaganda. Because this lady's funded by Pfizer. Look it up.
What about our kids' immune system?
I'm not going to answer questions right now. I'm going to let her finish.
We can't talk to you and ask questions. You wait until we have
Zach,
spoken.
I said at the beginning that unlike town meeting, this is not a public debate. I let everyone have their time, and I'm affording the doctor the same amount of time. The doctor that works in intensive care and has saved children's lives. So why we are dismissing her level of expertise is beyond me, but we're not debating here. I understand your frustrations.
Are we paying for her time too?
You are not paying for this meeting. I mean, you're simply not.
Our kids need to build an immune system. That's what I'm asking about. I'm asking a real question too about this. How are our kids supposed to keep building immune systems when they're being masked so they can't catch anything, which helps build our immune system?
I'm going to turn it back over to our speaker. Thank you.
Thanks. So I also just want to share that I hear people's frustrations. I think the pandemic has been really challenging. I also hear a lot from families who are very nervous about the school year, who are very worried about their children. And I just want to make sure that we keep those families in mind too, when we discuss this. So I guess I want to end on just saying, I do think that we can have a really good school year. I think that we can get our students back into the school building. I've been meeting with the school nurses and they are excited and ready to go. We're revising protocols. I think this school year is going to feel really pretty normal. We do need to take these special precautions, but I think students can have a healthy and safe and productive school year. I think we can really try to minimize disruptions. The really key things that we keep in mind are staying home when sick, getting everyone who's eligible to be vaccinated, meaning everyone in the community by getting vaccinated can really help minimize the spread of COVID in the community. That minimizes the likelihood that COVID will enter the school building. And then if it does enter the school building, masking and then contact tracing and testing will help mitigate the spread of COVID within the building too. I know it's tough. Last year was also tough trying to get school started again. And I really appreciate the collaboration we have with the school districts. And, I know tensions are high, but, if you really want to be angry about the masking guidance, it's really coming very universally, very broadly from all public health officials in all, medical organizations. So this is not something that, the superintendent is coming up with on their own. It's not something the school boards are coming up with on their own. This is what they're hearing. This is what we're recommending. This is a very, very broad consensus here. And we're happy to continue to work with you as you need it, as things come up. We work closely with the school nurses as well. So thanks for giving me the time.
Thank you for joining us, Dr. Bell. We really appreciate it. I also have a local pediatrician today, Dr. Tracy Tyson from Northwestern Pediatrics. And we've also asked her to join us tonight to give her perspective on our mitigation measures for the reopening of school.
Hi, I'm new to this area, so some of you I may have met and some of you I may have not. I recently moved from Florida in March. So we do have an interesting perspective, having gone through the pandemic, the early parts, the middle parts of the pandemic, and then also still being very close with my colleagues and patients. I hear what everyone is saying. First of all, thank you so much for showing up, everyone, whether it's in opposition or in support of the board's decision, because I think everybody in every situation in this room really truly cares about kids and wants what's best for them. And so to every single one of you who talked or who didn't talk, thank you very much. Our perspective from the community itself is that we've done, and I say we, but you have done an absolutely amazing job protecting your kids over the last 18 months, protecting your community. I was absolutely astounded when I got here at the level of support for one another, as well as the just level of care. I received a lot less concern over COVID for my own children when I moved here. They did not go to school last year in Florida, and they psychologically suffered for that quite significantly, just because of their own circumstances. And that was because we didn't feel that it was safe with the numbers being so high. We didn't feel it was a safe environment for them to be there. And that is absolutely a personal decision on every single level. We do, as a community, however, support that all children need to be in school next year. So reiterating what Dr. Bell said, we saw a 4-fold increase in mental health issues in children alone in the last 18 months. That's my specialty, one of the things that I do the most of, and it's heartbreaking in every single way. A lot of that was done because of the things that we did to control this virus. There's no doubt about that, 100%. It was done because they were afraid, because maybe they lost a family member, because maybe they felt that they contributed to the loss of a family member, because they lost their sports, they lost their community, they lost their churches, they lost a lot. Absolutely, it was detrimental in every single way. So the goal is to move forward. The goal is, initially, it was complete outside of school and nothing. We couldn't leave our homes. Then we moved to going back, let's get half the kids in there. Let's get half the kids at home. And then we learned that we didn't need to do some of the cleaning things. We learned that children initially did not spread the virus as much as we thought they were. We accommodate. We learned children, this was not as deadly for them initially, so we accommodated for that and slowly moved forward. So I think that there is an end point. I have no idea when that is. I wish I knew. We're learning right along with you guys. I'm not a scientist, I'm a practitioner of medicine, so I do rely on the scientists to help guide me as well with what my recommendations are to families when I actually treat illness. So a lot of this is still me following recommendations as well. It eventually is going to become more like the flu and RSV and the common cold, but right now it's not. It is moving forward with in-person school with everyone wearing a mask is absolutely supported by all the evidence that we have today. That is absolutely going to be able to change at some point in time. Is it 100%? No, we are never going to 100% stop this virus, never. That has never been the intention. It was to try to mitigate unnecessary death, unnecessary hospitalizations, unnecessary hospital admissions, emergency rooms being full, and Vermont has done a beautiful job, absolutely beautiful job. What we're seeing in Florida right now is absolutely devastating. They're a few years ahead of us, and I say Florida, there's 7 states that right now are higher in the United States than we've ever been with pediatric hospitalizations, intensive care hospitalizations, and pediatric spread. So we're in real time learning what this looks like with the new variants that are out there. The new variant is up to 2-fold more transmissible from children. So we are noticing a significant increase in the number of kids that are able to spread it to each other. We are also noticing much, much higher rates of hospitalizations in children. As of today, before I came in, there are 6 children in my hometown's pediatric intensive care unit with COVID. I have never in 15 years of medicine seen 6 children in an intensive care unit with the same illness at one time. It's very scary for those of us in medicine. I won't give you a ton of numbers. So many people have done their research and we can debate on which numbers are true or not, and they're going to change. But I've never seen anything like this in my career, and I don't think any of us have seen anything like this in our lifetimes. And so what we've seen exactly in Florida is that every single day since school started, they have seen a doubling of COVID cases in children. And they don't have our contact tracing. They're waiting 10 to 14 days to notify families because they just have too many. So as that's happening, the ICUs are 220% full right now in Florida, as well as the intensive care units are reaching their breach with children. I've never seen my colleagues so devastated, so stressed out, so nervous. I've never seen this in my career. It doesn't mean we have all the answers. It doesn't mean we're right. It doesn't mean that everyone doesn't have an opinion or a perspective, or that it won't change and that it's not frustrating to us when it does change. It just means that the rules had to change when that started happening. I think most medical people did not completely agree when the mask mandates were lifted in the beginning, just because we thought, hang on just a second, just wait, we're doing so well. Let's slowly open up. Let's get back to normal life, but let's not remove the masks just yet. When they were removed, we started to notice increase in variants. And so our position is, let's get back to as much as we can to preserve our kids' mental health and their educational health without using them to spread the virus to other people. And I hope that that does not happen here. So I understand everybody is frustrated, and I totally get it, and I totally support it. Our job in the community is just going to be continue to support everyone the best way that we can. Again, stay home when you're sick. wash your hands. We do agree with mask wearing. I've seen hundreds of cases of COVID since it started. I haven't caught it, thank goodness. And in the beginning, I wasn't given proper PPE. I didn't even have an N95 mask, and the 2 masks did a really good job. So we do support the recommendation. We do support the school systems around the state. I think most of them are coming up with the same decision. And there's actually in some other states where they're kind of fighting to get to the same thing. So again, that's kind of our perspective in the community. We're here. We're trying to open up our hours more to see more and more sick kids because respiratory viruses are coming back. And so if people do have questions specifically like the ones about the immune system and things like that, please ask a medical provider you trust. We may not have the answer, but we'll look it up for you. And if we don't know, we'll try to find it. The same thing goes with the vaccine. There's a lot of questions associated with that, completely understandable. I vaccinated both my kids. The very first day in Vermont it was available, I cried while they were getting it, but that's my perspective. And I come at that with a whole lot of other things behind it. So if anyone has any questions, the best thing to do is not to get numbers. It's actually just to talk to someone that you trust that has that education level. I hope that you have someone to do that, and we are always available in any of our practices to answer any of those questions. And we are hoping to offer the vaccination in our offices. We do not have it at this time just because it's a difficult vaccine to keep. And so it's not that we don't support it. I was reading some things that pediatricians don't have it in their office. Does that mean they don't support it? And that's not true. It's just expensive and difficult. So hopefully as the recommendations come down, we will be able to offer more information as well as offer the vaccine. We also give several town halls. Dr. Bell and I were a part of another one. So as more information comes out, we've tried to get onto Zoom and offer as much information as we can. So I encourage anyone who has questions to look out for those as they're coming. And I learned a ton of information myself on them. So they're really good for all levels of, understanding of medical knowledge. So thank you for inviting me, and thank you for all you do for our kids, and thank you for the parents for taking awesome care of your kids.
Thank you, Dr. Tyson. So a couple of points that I just want to make in terms of decision making. I think that Dr. Tyson, you brought up the goal of full-time in person. That certainly is something that has been a priority for
full-time. Yeah.
Zoom problems, right? So that's certainly a goal of mine. I hear what people are saying about how students have lost out and how students have suffered during this time, and about the stressors and the mental health issues, and I agree. And I agree there are a lot of ways, a lot of reasons that students have experienced those stressors. I think one of the primary factors was when they weren't able to access school and their friends and their support systems in school and in-person learning. And I think that it is of the utmost importance that we prioritize in-person learning for our students. And that is one of the primary reasons why I have made this decision. Another factor that plays into that is also protecting the financial security of our families by prioritizing in-person learning, because we know that there is an economic impact every time we have to close a classroom or every time we have to close a school. So when we started learning about the variant around Delta and about the increased transmissibility of the Delta variant, it brought me back to the hours we spent contact tracing throughout the last school year. And those difficult conversations, those calls that the principals had to make sometimes up until 10 or 11 o'clock at night to let families know that their children had been close contacts and they were going to need to be out of school for a period of time. We're still in that position. We're still in a place where when the virus finds its way into our classrooms, we will need to do contact tracing. There are pieces that people are still trying to figure out in terms of the guidance that they're going to be giving us at the school level. So we have not yet gotten the most recent guidance on how contact tracing will work this year, but we do know that if the virus does come in, we will have those issues. So again, the decision to mask is another attempt at trying to protect the learning environment as much as we can so that we can keep that continuity of learning for our students. We know how important it is that we provide them both academic supports and mental health supports as they return to school. And that's one of the primary drivers of this decision. I know people had definitely some questions, and I think that there were some questions around the 80% and how that is calculated. And I wish I could tell you that I had the exact answers for that. That piece of guidance we're still waiting on from the state. What I think I understand at this point is the 80% threshold will be determined by the number of eligible students. So I'll need to confirm this once the written guidance comes out, but I believe in a K-8 school, it would be connected to the number of students 12 and older. And then the ability to take down the mask would be for that specific group of students. So that being said, there are a couple other points I just wanted to make. People brought up the vaccination clinics. I want to make sure people hear we are not mandating vaccinations. There's absolutely no way that vaccinations would ever happen without parent permission. The clinics are actually things that I believe all of our 3 dates, I can double check, but I believe they're all on the weekends. So I think they're from 2 o'clock until 8 o'clock at Richford High School. So that wouldn't be us bringing students to that. That would be parents voluntarily bringing students. And there are vaccination clinics that are going to be held all around the state. And I know that there are differences of opinion about whether or not it's safe to vaccinate children. And I think that, what we've heard from the medical professionals is that vaccination is one of the primary mitigation measures to stop the spread of the virus, because we definitely all have the end goal. We're ready to be done with this. I'm ready to be done with this. This has been a long, now 3 school years. And I'm definitely ready to shift back into the focus on education and learning for all of our students. The other piece is about testing. So this is another piece. Surveillance testing is something that the agency, in connection with the Vermont Department of Health, we did surveillance testing last year with our staff members, and that was completely voluntary. Anybody that wanted to do it could do it. The school nurses helped to do those tests. The agency and VDH are making that available for students, so it's completely voluntary. If families want students to do the surveillance testing, that will be available. In terms of, I think it was Nikki that asked questions about, the heat. I get it. I struggled with the mask rash myself this last year. I think that one of the things that we're hoping that our educators will do is encourage the outside learning time as much as they can at the start of the year, because we always have those last days of summer that make being inside of our schools tremendously hot. In terms of consequences, I know this has been a primary concern for people, and I would like to not think about this in terms of consequence as much as making sure that we're setting an expectation and we're following through on the expectation as we make the decision to require masks. So the Secretary of Education released a memo earlier today. It was this afternoon. And in the memo, he is quoted as saying that a school district may adopt a policy requiring students to wear a mask at school and may enforce the policy by refusing to admit a student who does not comply. And then he gives some other examples around attendance policies and residency and proof of immunizations as other reasons that schools would, in some cases, refuse admittance. So that's certainly not where we want to go with this. We want to be able to work with families and navigate a plan for reentry. So we certainly would put some proactive steps in place and try to help support students and families to meet the requirement about masking. And ultimately, we would navigate, there will be some families who will request an exemption around masking. We will be using the same guidance that we received last year around qualifying for exemptions. And so our school teams will be considering those exemption requests. Those will be also connected to the local pediatricians, whoever sees the children in connection with whatever rationale there is for the medical exemption. So we'll be using that same guidance this year, and in some rare cases, there will likely be exemptions given. Other than that, the expectation will be that the masks will be required while they're in school until we get to the 80% threshold, or the guidance, the recommendations from our public health experts are modified.
So we can't appeal this decision because that's our right.
I think that goes back to you. Answer that question. And they're appealing it to you.
Are you asking that of Lynn or of the board? Well, I want to reiterate that in giving Lynn, our superintendent, last week, and of the jurisdiction and authority to craft our reopening plan, that the board is in lockstep and in support of Lynn's decision.
So 7 of you make the decision for hundreds of kids that you don't even, I know a huge group of kids that are planning to show up to school first week of school and say, what are you doing? Are you really going to kick out or after students for not wearing masks? Because that's what it's going to come down to. There are way more, I know that there's a lot more here last week, but there is a lot more out there that couldn't come for whatever reason, and kids never come out. They'll say, I'm not wearing a mask. Why can't it just be like, your child, your choice? Wear a mask, let them wear a mask.
We actually have somebody here who's actually impacted by this. Thomas, how do you feel about wearing a mask in school?
I just don't like going to school because it just sucks.
I hear you, Thomas. Thank you for sharing that. So, all right, folks, listen. Can we listen? Please listen. As I stated before, this really isn't the forum for debate. We have a lot. I will say that what the doctors have both said and what we have articulated, excuse me, I'm talking. It was a really different landscape, COVID-wise, at that stage in the pandemic when the governor lifted the emergency order. And I understand that, but what we are responding to and what the guidance coming to us from the health experts, from the epidemiologists, it is in real time reflective of this moment with this Delta variant. It is no longer the COVID of yesteryear. It is a very new and different situation. We are choosing to follow the recommendations from the health experts, follow the data, follow the science, listen to the epidemiologists. That is what we are doing. We are drawing on our resources medically, and that is what the state is doing. They have a huge array of people that are in the weeds with this science, with this data, the epidemiologists, the doctors. That's the recommendation. Okay. And we are tasked with a duty of care, and we feel as though the policies that we are enacting for the start of the school year honors that duty of care for all of our students. And we will have to take this up at another time. You are welcome to call me. I will make sure that people have my phone number, my email. I beg your pardon? We make many decisions over the course of an academic year.
Like she said, you need permission to get into the time. But you can make this decision for all of our kids without input from us. You can't revisit this, you can't ask for, you could as a board decide to revisit it and how to vote.
And we are not currently going to do that right now. And we are going to, and now, I'm going to close I am going to close the discussion and we're going to move on with our board business. I beg your pardon?
You work the not the other way around. And that is on you. My kid will not be wearing a mask in school, and I dare you to kick him out.
How many surveys did we get last year for in-person or out hybrid? Why can't we do a survey for who wants to wear a mask? I don't understand why they are forced to wear a mask. When did Delta start? When did Delta come about? 2 weeks ago when someone came and then so how
we had an open, we had a public comment window that has now ended. We had a public comment window that has now ended. This is not a meeting of the public. This is our board meeting. We have a lot of other board business to attend to. You are welcome to reach out to us at a later date. Feel free to email us and we can pick. And yours is one set of opinions. We have heard from countless other people. The people who are pleased with the plan are not here because they don't feel the need to come, other than our one guest here. So we have just as many people who feel deeply relieved at the policy. They feel as though their kids' health is going to be protected moving forward into the year. I hear you, and we can no longer take time to debate this right now.
How many want masks? How many don't? Why can't we have
Folks, I'm going to move on with the next phase of the meeting. We're done debating this. I am sorry for your frustrations. I really hear where you're coming from. I get it. I don't think this is, I think there is nothing easy about this. These are tough conversations. They are tough choices. We are very polarized around this issue. We have everyone's best interest at heart in how we are going about this. We have many people who support this. Many. All right. Thank you, folks. Thank you. We're going to move on. All right. So we are on to, do you want to finish or do you want to do P.E.G?
We're going to go back to mine at the end.
All right.
So we have Dr. Baker.
All right, so we have Dr. Baker on our Zoom, and we're going to do the Portrait of a Graduate Implementation Team presentation.
So we.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Are you helping? Okay. Michelle is also helping.
Okay, Michelle, you're going to help guide this too. Okay. If you need.
Thanks for joining us, Wendy.
Well, that's no problem. Given the weight of your agenda tonight, Michelle and I thought it might serve the board best if we actually go ahead and just give a summary of where we are now and let you know what the next 3 months will entail, and then invite your participation further. So you've gotten the presentation that the implementation committee has come up with. It essentially says that they'd like to put together subcommittees that are smaller with particular expertise to each characteristic that will work through January. And they would like to continue as an implementation steering committee group so that they're able to receive information about feasibility and working definition creation for each characteristic into January. We should have another presentation for you in February about what that looks like, including what the beginning of the 22-23 school year might entail relative to recommendations for implementation. We would like to invite all Franklin Northeast board members who are available to feel free to join one of the subcommittees around one of the characteristics. It's been nice to have Polly as part of that work because you know, it's interesting. We'll also reach out to be sure that there's community and business representation on each subcommittee to make sure every angle is covered. So that's the short version. Would you like to discuss any questions that you might have, or have either Michelle or I lead you through anything specific relative to any of the characteristics?
I think they're looking through the presentation, Wendy. I'm getting a sense that they're seeing if they have questions.
It's no problem. While they do that, I could take a moment to just say what a pleasure it was to work with an implementation committee that took the student design work that was built upon by the Discovery Committee and then extended again. That group had representation from all schools, all grade levels, and they really couldn't have been more involved and invested in seeing that everything was done well. And it was an absolute pleasure to support them through that process. Michelle is well poised to be able to take the work from here and ensure that it proceeds with everybody's voice at the table in a way that is going to work for implementation. And I'm always happy to help if needed.
Wendy, I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about the K through 12 kind of ahas with some of the committee representation.
Yes, some of the characteristics are really built upon at the lower grades, and then they begin to kind of fade out in terms of teaching opportunities as the students get older, and vice versa. Some of them are the conversations don't begin until 7th or 8th grade and into high school, and yet some of the elementary school teachers are thinking, wait a minute, we could build on that, we could do that down at the lower levels as well without too much difficulty. So the idea of really building a K-12 commitment to things like financial literacy, for example, is something that the students originally felt was very important in their design. And the Discovery Committee found some resources and connections possibly too, and the implementation committee's conversation only deepened. It became more practical and pragmatic to look at this in a K-12 way. I think generally the idea that students will demonstrate how they're moving in these characteristics at checkpoints, like perhaps 5th grade, 8th grade, 11th or 12th grade was something that was also very welcome.
I definitely saw that in my group. I was contributor, and we were talking about it. How does somebody contribute, and what does that look like in the high school? And Christina Bowen was in the group, and she was saying, well, I definitely could see how this would apply in like my morning meeting with first and second graders. Like, how are you being a contributor? So we had exactly those conversations. Like, what does it look like across kindergarten to 12th grade? So I can only imagine that once the subcommittees break out and really dig into the work, that even more conversations would happen about that.
What's really nice about the implementations committee's recommendation to go to a subcommittee structure is that you're now going to involve probably 40 more people across the district and in the community in the conversation in a way that is really thinking about what are the pragmatic next steps that we can all agree on so that you're set up for the 22-23 implementation year well. And I think that's going to be great. When you think about the fact that this work began with 13 high school students, looking across the landscape, interviewing business people, collecting over 300 pieces of data in their community about what was important for graduates of this school system, and now this is where it is. And you've had a lot to deal with in the meantime. It's pretty impressive. Any other questions or things you'd like either Michelle or I to look into, just spend another moment on?
I would love to just hear if you could reiterate kind of what the next steps are, and as you move into the fall and the winter. I know you mentioned subcommittees. What is that going to look like? Who would you like to see those comprised of?
Yes, so there are six characteristics six of the seven that are ready for subcommittee work this fall. Each of those committees, there have been people identified that have expertise in those areas. For example, there's a social and emotional advisory group that exists in Franklin Northeast. The thinking is that some of those folks should dovetail into the work around emotional intelligence, that characteristic. Guidance counselors have also indicated that they would like to be part of those types of conversations and lend their expertise, since they advise social and emotional curriculum across K-12 schools in Franklin Northeast. That's an example. So each of the specific characteristics have been through the process where the implementation committee has said, what are the questions that we need to answer? What are some things that still need to be done? What is guidance that we need? So each of those subcommittees have been loosely staffed with those from the supervisory union that have expertise in those areas, like financial literacy, for example. There are already some people in the district who belong to state groups that are in place to move this work forward, since it's part of the quality standards that the state is emphasizing. So those groups will answer those questions, report back to the implementation committee in November. They might be done at that point, or the implementation committee might say, could you finalize some of these pieces, come back to us in January so that they can compile a report for you at what I believe is your February meeting.
Is there anything you wanted to add, Michelle?
I think Wendy's done a nice job. Again, I came on to this team this summer and have really started to learn a lot about the work that the two committees prior to this have done. And I think this committee this summer has really done a nice job of wanting to expand membership by getting into these subcommittees and having people with more expertise come in. I think it's going to be a really nice direction. And I think that they're really being very careful about how to proceed with these characteristics. As we move forward with graduation requirements. So it's been really good work. They're being very thoughtful about how to proceed with this work to build capacity in the district.
Lynn, it might be interesting for the board members to know that, I think one of the things that we came to you after the Discovery Committee to report was that the question of where do the proficiency standards go, the priority standards and the academic proficiency pieces, how do those relate? The information savvy group is going to actually include curriculum expertise that's been refined within the district, including Jody, to come up with a couple of different models and what those might look like, so that the implementation committee can actually look at a couple of different approaches to that, since it hasn't quite settled as to the best way to approach it, so that the district gets to streamline its resources in the same direction, and everybody feels like, okay, we know where we're going and we know what that looks like and we're behind that. So that's one of the things that they probably should have ready for presentation to the implementation committee in November. There might be some further clarification needed, but a recommendation around that is designed to come out of the implementation steering committee to the Franklin Northeast Board as part of your February meeting.
So Wendy, can I just clarify? I think what you're saying is there's that question of, does academic proficiency become the seventh characteristic?
Eighth at the moment, yes.
Characteristic,
Right.
however many we land on. Or is it kind of below the characteristics of the graduate? So
one of the things, there's actually a door number 3, Lynn, that has come up in the committee, and that is that it might be possible to adjust the definition of information savvy so that it actually indicates the type of information that each of the students need to have in each of the academic areas, which is similar to what the priority standards articulates. So it might be possible to put all of that in information savvy, so that characteristic would not only include here's what you have to do with it, but here's what you have to know and show that you do know in order to be able to to meet a graduation requirement. So there's, as you've said, there's the 8th characteristic, there's something that is sort of fundamental to them all, or there's the amendment of information savvy that might actually include that academic proficiency underneath it with a bit of an expanded definition. So that subgroup will present models that address all 3 of those options viably.
Great, thank you.
So I think the next steps, as you asked for, will really, if the board wants us to move in this direction, we will start inviting people to be part of those subcommittees to get that work started in short time.
So this would be a good point to let us know, to let Dr. Irish and Dr. Baker know, are the committees in the right direction? Are they heading where you want them to go? And do you give them your blessing to keep moving forward with this work?
I do, absolutely. And I can attest just from working with the committees that the work they're doing, I think is really meaningful, and I think they're heading in the right direction.
I agree.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Bye,
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
It's easy to just write something up, right? And then, you know, implement it and start it and hope it works well. It's far more difficult and I think far more rewarding systemically to do the work the way that you know, Lynn and other colleagues have designed it, because I think what you're going to get is something that you're going to be able to stay with and that you're going to be able to build upon over time, and that you're going to have student buy-in, community buy-in, and educator buy-in together. And, you know, that's obviously magic when it comes to really making a difference in the educational opportunities that students have. So it's a little bit of go slow to go fast, but I think this next 3-month period of time is going to make a big difference in everybody's clarity about where to go and how to get there.
Okay.
So, are all members of the board good?
Yes, I think we're good, and I think you're moving in a wonderful direction. And I know this is a huge undertaking. It's really interesting to see the process unfolding. I appreciate it so much. Okay, thank you. So, Morgan, you are up with your financial business reports. Would you like the mic?
Sure. So in terms of financial update, I don't really have anything additional from the updates that I sent to you at your local district meetings over the last 2 weeks. In terms of the central office space, and I'm sorry if any of this is a repeat from the last time I was with you. I met with the Richford Select Board on June 10th. At that meeting, they approved extending the lease by 1 year at a 2.9% increase, which is the increase that you're allowed to do without a bid. The wording of the motion they made was pending legal review, and one of the select board members sent the information off to their town's lawyer. I had sent them a draft of the lease on June 15th, and I sent it again last week because I hadn't heard anything. Obviously, I don't have any access to their lawyer, but I know that their lawyer spoke with your lawyer on a few occasions, and the feedback I got from your lawyer is that he doesn't think that bid law gets to be ignored. And so I will update you if I hear anything more from the select board based on the message I sent last week. Have you paid them anything yet? Because we don't have anything signed, this past week we sent a check in for 2 months of rent, and we sent it in for the amount on the last signed contract that we have with them. And I gave them a heads up, and I said we will true it up when we have something new, but it didn't feel right to be in the space and not paying them anything. In terms of the new space, I don't really have any update from the last time we spoke. And I have one other, and it is going to have a request for action. Roxanne Tanner, bookkeeper in our office, has accepted a job as business manager for the Rangeley Lakes School District in Maine. So she will be leaving us after 21 years at central office. It's a great move for her. It is lousy for us, but we'll survive, and it is hard to see her go. The motion request is that hourly staff in our office do not automatically receive the $25 per sick day benefit that you give to teachers who have had 20 years in the system or union support staff who have had 20 years in the system. And so I'm bringing a request that you make a motion to allow her to receive that sick time buyout, and you can word it just as per the union support staff agreement. And I'm happy to answer any questions on that.
How many days?
She has about, I think, 102, which is the maximum she can because she never takes sick days. And so we cap everybody in our office at 90, and you lose down to 90 on June 30th, and then you get another 12 days on July 1st.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to honor that as per the, what was it, the teacher's agreement? No.
Either the teacher's agreement or
The
the
union
support
agreement,
staff
right. Yeah, I feel like somebody who puts that amount of time and does the work that efficiently and diligently should be rewarded for sure. So I'll make a motion to do that.
All right, we'll do that by roll. Emily? Kat?
Aye.
Rick?
Aye.
Kevin?
Aye.
Polly? And Mary is an aye.
So we'll have some discussions in the office around what replacement looks like, review job descriptions. I don't know that I'll have an update for you by your next meeting because we don't tend to move too quickly when that happens. And then the only other that I have is that in October, we'll start working on the 2023 budget.
2023, okay.
Thanks, Morgan. So Lynn, now we're going to circle back to you for the remainder of your report.
Oh, sorry.
So I would like to start with personnel. In my board report, I'm just going to go over the new hires for the summer. So working for FNESU, we have Eleanor Stevenson, who's been hired as a part-time 0.4 FTE ELL teacher. Jessica Henderson, who was previously our ELL teacher, we're moving her to full-time special education, so we had to hire someone to replace her to provide ELL services. We have hired Karina Stanley to be a half-time interventionist, a literacy interventionist at Richford Elementary. Tara Ryan, a half-time literacy interventionist at Richford High School. Jenny Hull, a 0.8 FTE literacy interventionist at Richford High School. Hugh McKinney, he is a math interventionist at Sheldon. Emily Grims as a 0.4 FTE speech and language pathologist. Welcome back, Emily. I think she's on this call. Janessa Swainbank has been hired to be a family engagement coordinator for Enosburg, all of Enosburg schools. Gabrielle Lumbra has been hired as our Flexible Pathways Academy principal. Amber Loisel will continue on as the Flexible Pathways Academy administrative assistant. Cassandra Larson has moved from Enosburg High School to the Flexible Pathways Academy, so she'll be serving as that PE teacher and, remind me, Gavin, and the SEL teacher. Brittany Cook will be working in our Flexible Pathways Academy. Alessandra Lorusco will be also a Flexible Pathways Academy teacher. Eva Valenta has been hired as our LEAPS site coordinator for Berkshire. Taryn Jarvis, Dawn has filled the food service positions internally now that the Sheldon food service is in-house. And I think these are familiar faces in Sheldon. So Taryn Jarvis will be in food service, and Renata Hayes will also be in food service. Pam Royer has been hired to work in food service at Enosburg High School. and Kurt Bentley has been hired in Montgomery to do food service. We did have some resignations over the summers. We have Lauren Holt, who has resigned to move to the kindergarten position. Barb Olavi has resigned for food service at Enosburg High School. Rob Barnard from food service at Montgomery, and Joanne Young from food service at Richford High School. We still, at this point, have several open positions. So we have a family engagement coordinator position open for some of our NMV schools, and we have a family engagement coordinator open for the Richford school communities. We're still looking for a social emotional learning and an EST coordinator. There's a middle school reading specialist position here at Enosburg Middle School. We are looking for an early childhood special educator, a literacy interventionist, a couple of literacy interventionists, math interventionists, an occupational therapy assistant, a technology support specialist, a kitchen assistant, a long-term special ed substitute teacher, and certified tutors. So we have experienced a shortage in several of our hard-to-fill positions. We are experiencing a shortage from substitute teachers to food service subs to paraeducators to, it's very hard to fill the interventionist positions and even harder to fill the special educator positions, especially in early childhood because it's such a specialized license. So we're going to keep working on it. We're going to try to get creative in terms of our recruitment strategies. So you may be hearing more from us as we move into the year about some brainstorms that we have about ways in which we might be able to recruit people not only to FNESU but to the profession as well. What we're experiencing is not unique to other schools throughout Vermont. They're also experiencing shortages. I think our shortages may be amplified a bit because of our geography and how we lose that northern area to the Canadian border. We don't really draw anybody from the north. Next up, I have facilities management. So we had talked as an SU board a while back about considering whether or not we want to look at facilities management the way we have looked at food service. So you made the decision several years, 3 years ago, Don? 3 years ago to move to a SU level food service director. And I'm incredibly thankful that you made that decision, especially during the pandemic. So now you're in a position, both of your boards, I've spoken to both of the local boards. You're in a place where neither side has a facilities manager. So the question now lands at this board's level as to whether or not you're ready to consider a facilities director at the SU level.
We talked about this at the NMV meeting, and I think Polly, Rick, Kevin, you all did too at your last meeting, correct? I mean, certainly on the NMV side, with the resignation of Kelly, you know, we feel pretty positive about kind of moving forward for someone at the SU level because of the kind of complexity of this position. We all acknowledge that we would want to kind of do a kind of lay a better kind of groundwork as far as the job description and kind of really elucidating kind of what this person is going to do. That was maybe a little vague. I think the timing was challenging, bringing Kelly in right when COVID hit. I mean, there just was not a lot of bandwidth available to really kind of work with him and kind of craft that position to our needs. And certainly when we see what Dawn does at the food service level, it's that level, like it kind of calls for that level of person. And you know, one thing we spoke about at the NMV level is that we may at some point find that we also need someone who is in that kind of more trades level, not the custodial kind of day-to-day maintenance, but maybe someone at the trades level, but that doesn't kind of override the need for the person at the higher level who's really got that bird's eye view of our facilities, our systems, kind of where we are in this moment and where we are in it, what we need to do in a year, 5 years, 10 years, you know, kind of for the longevity of these buildings, and be able to have that kind of long-term, craft that kind of long-term plan, as well as coordinate some of that kind of day-to-day kind of maintenance related issues, and then some of the larger kind of renovations that we may see coming down the pike. So I all along have been in support of someone at the SU level in this position. So I would love to see it happen, but certainly we'll want to hear from everyone, hear what other people are thinking.
I'm in support of it. I think you know, we had discussions at our meeting, and if we can find the right person with the correct job description, so we can be more proactive on our maintenance than reactive, and you know, have that 5-year, 10-year plan where we prioritize the projects based on need and what they want. I think it makes sense. So I'm in full support of it.
Yeah, I think that was the conversation we had at the ER board meeting, is that after kind of like working through what it looks like, again, kind of coming up with that solid job description, but I think you were in support. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, all right, great. So is that, we would probably want to make a motion to do this hire. So then I will make the motion that we'll approve a position for a facilities manager at the SU level.
Director.
Facilities director, correct, sorry. I'll do that by roll. Emily? Aye. Kat? Aye. Rick?
Aye.
Kevin?
Aye.
Polly? Aye. And Mary is an aye. And then I think it does kind of beg this question, we talked about this, Lynn and I have talked about this, that, oh, I'm kind of hijacking.
It's okay. Sorry, it's okay.
Do you want to go ahead?
Yep,
And
you got
okay.
it.
Okay.
Take it
That we would maybe form a committee of, can't be any more than 3 of us, and to really kind of come up with that kind of clear job description of what the hiring process is going to be, qualifications, interviewing, and all of that. So I'd love to hear, you know, who is interested in being on that committee. I'm certainly happy to be one of the 3.
I'll do it.
Rick, that's great. Do I have a third?
Got it.
I mean, it could just be us 2, but.
I'm interested, it just depends on the time commitment. That's my
Yeah. Okay.
But do you have an idea?
All right, well, why don't we say Rick and Mary, and then Emily, hopefully, you know, as it works with a busy kids' athletic schedule, which I
Okay.
totally get.
Mary, I'm available too, if you do need and want a third, so you can.
Okay.
Maybe between you or Emily.
If she's free and can 100 commit to have her take this, yeah.
Okay, so Emily feels like if you are 100% in and can do it, then she's happy to step back.
Okay, yeah, I should be able to do it.
Okay, super. Well, we will connect. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you all. Thank you all for that. So we'll, Mary, we can work through, you know, getting that started and trying to schedule a meeting with that committee of the board.
Great.
So I'm going to go to my, the 4th part of my agenda, and that is around the superintendent leave. I'm talking to you about this as informational. I'm actually having surgery on Tuesday, so I'm going to need to be out of work for a short period of time. I'm anticipating that I'll be able to return physically in 2 weeks. I'm very hopeful that I could return virtually much sooner than that. That will certainly be what I'll be advocating for with my own provider. So I just wanted to inform the board that Michelle Taberge, our Director of Student Services, will be acting superintendent while I'm unable to be working. There is, when I return, I will have some mobility issues. So we have a little reorganization that we're going to need to do at our central office because I won't be able to access my office space. So I will be working primarily in the business office when I return and spending some time working virtually, so a blend of both. So in total, I'll have some restrictions for around 6 weeks. So, okay. I have no others.
Okay. I have so many tabs, I'm just trying to find my agenda here. All right, so director's reports, and I do want to be mindful of the time, but also that you are here and you showed up, and we appreciate that. So I don't know, I'll just go down the list, and if you have anything else that you wanted to add, or if the board has any questions for that particular person, just feel free to speak up. Dominic, do you have anything else than what was in your report, or you want to share a bit?
I don't think so, unless anybody has any questions or like any more information.
How many people can apply for the job?
We had a couple right away that found other positions before we were even able to schedule a meeting. And then there was a drought of like, I'd say close to 2 months with nobody. And then we've had, I think 5 apply over the last like 2 weeks. Although one is in Germany and one is in Alaska. So I don't know how realistic those two are, but we do have 3 local as well.
Are the asses remote working, are they?
Didn't say that in their letters.
A lot of people are right now.
Yeah. So we at least have enough that we're ready to start coming together as a committee and start doing some interview schedule.
Great, thanks. Jody, how about you? Anything to add to your report? And
no additions.
Any questions for Jody? Okay. Michelle, anything further to add? Any questions for Michelle, folks?
Which one?
Oh, I'm sorry, Tavesh. Right, I got to get used to that.
Yes.
Pardon me. Yes, that's. And Michelle, I'm sorry we weren't able to do the spotlight today, but we will. Michelle Irish, that is. We will do that in September. I look really forward to that. And welcome to your very first board meeting with us. We're really, really pleased to have you here. Any questions for Michelle Irish, that is?
I have one, I think, action item.
Please.
Was under my board report, was the equity committee. Is that something to have?
What was the action?
It was, I don't know if it was an action or not, but do we need to have action around building the equity committee funding for it? We're going to have people that was action.
That you wanted them to participate in, I think just volunteers, not necessarily action.
And Michelle, did you specifically want that from the SU board, or are you interested in from the district boards?
I think we can get back to this. What we talked about.
Yep. Well, then what do you think? Do you think we should wait till our district boards and give everyone, we just have more people to draw on?
I was going to say for burnout's sake,
Yeah.
I would just draw on the district.
I mean, I would love to be involved, but I can, I can voice that at the NMB meeting.
I do think it would be, I want to make sure that we have representation from both boards on there, so it probably makes sense to be local.
So we'll make sure at our respective board meetings for the districts to circle back to that, and you would ideally like 3 people?
Up to 3 people.
Up to 3 people. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Let me know if you need anything.
Yeah, certainly. Okay, that's great. Heather, hey.
I actually missed putting the word in them. I apologize for that.
No problem.
We have a really successful summer program, over 300 hours per day. And one of the middle school sites was also very successful.
I think you need to use the mic, actually.
And I thought it was speaking up. But yeah, and Sheldon was a really good example. They had over 30 middle school students participate, where in the past they'd have 1 or 2. And they had over 50 elementary students participate, when in the past they'd have 15.
That's great.
We received a $15,000 grant from United Way for supporting the expansion of the Bridgeford community as part of the Vermont Youth Project. We did service learning in the Bridgeford community as well. The Bridgeford Junior Senior High School posted a lot of really great pictures of some river cleanup and painting park benches and some other community mural work. And that was also in partnership with Tobacco Free Coalition and some other community partners. And we're starting a round of visits from the 21C site coordinator or state coordinator, and he's very impressed with our programming. And one of the other things that was really standing out was being able to partner with the Bridgeford community again through the Vermont Youth Project, and using some grant funds that we were not able to use due to the pandemic to do community purchase activities for the community, such as pickleball stuff and tennis for the community. There's river tubes for people to rent to do some floating and stuff as well. So they're building up their recreation department, so we were able to partner with them as well. We've had a really great summer, and our programs are excited to start in September.
Thank you, Heather.
Thanks, Heather, that's awesome.
Jamie was not able to make it tonight.
Okay, no problem. Dawn, do you have anything you wanted to add to your report?
No, I think I'm good. I'm pretty close to fully staffed. Again, I'm on vacation today, and I'm
Nice.
looking at my expert position because early is thinking this is going to be her next year.
Wow.
This is her first session.
Aw.
Trying to get the right person into that position.
Yeah. Great, thank you.
I'm going to call after Warren's accent. And I just want to say, don't be scared of Alaska. I just heard that Alaska. So.
All right.
I didn't realize that's where he was from. That's great.
Have skills will travel. Gotta love it. That's great. Thanks so much, Dawn.
So Robin is also not here, but I will just report out in terms of the emergency operations piece. We had all of our new teachers participate in an Alice drill yesterday. I think they had close to 100. It was a lot of people. Courtney, how many? Did you say 80? So there were about 80 people participating in the drill, and I've heard some of the comments afterward and were incredibly positive, that they were a little fearful going in, but they felt like it was very powerful. And I'm so thankful to Sergeant Jim Lynch, and I'm also very thankful to Andre LeBeer, who they're both Franklin County Sheriff. They work from Franklin County Sheriffs as our SROs, and Robin Gagne, who work together to coordinate that training. And they'll also be doing another one on Monday with our substitute teachers and support staff. So they've done a really great job of keeping that focus on being prepared within our schools.
Great.
Gab,
Yeah.
and I have one to add.
Okay, great. Gabby, do you have anything you wanted to add about the virtual learning academies?
So I'm not sure, I'm not looking at the numbers, but I think they're pretty similar.
Okay.
We're getting like in and out every day.
Okay, super, thank you.
So Melissa, I'm so sorry. We missed you on this list. So I want to introduce Melissa Wood as our new director for early childhood programs. We're so thrilled to have you. This has been a position this board knows we've had it open for 2 years, and I'm so excited for us, and in particular for our early childhood teachers and staff and our students. And she's doing some great stuff. So we'd love to hear. Yeah.
Yesterday, we were able to pull together as an early childhood program throughout the supervisory union. And we talked about bringing MTSS down to the early ed level, which is EMTSS, E being early. And we just did some team building and really breathed some life into early ed and kind of bringing it back to why we're here. And we know, as Lynn was mentioning, there's an early childhood special ed position open, and I'm working really hard to support staff around that because there's a lot of stress around it, but there's a lot of hope too. We're in a really good place and going in a really great direction.
Awesome. Thank you, Melissa.
Welcome. It's super nice
Mary,
to
can
have you.
I say one thing before I pass it on to you for board business?
Yes, please.
So I know Morgan got to make the request and ask about Roxanne, but I can't let someone leave our office after 21 years without publicly acknowledging the commitment that Roxanne Tanner has had to the organization. She is one of those people that are just invaluable. She's a tremendous asset in FNESU, and our loss is certainly going to be Rangeley's gain. They're lucky to be getting her, and she's going to be hard to replace. So I just want to publicly thank Roxanne for her years of dedicated service to Franklin Northeast and all of our member schools.
Thanks. So we're on to board business and setting future agenda items. It looks like we'll be kind of working on this facilities director. We're going to wait to hear from Michelle Irish at the individual board level for getting that committee pulled together. We will continue to work on the board vision and goals selection at the September meeting. There is a section here around some future work around the superintendent job description revision, the evaluation for the superintendent, and then the board member job description development. And I'm not totally sure how we want to see that unfold as far as a timeline and a process.
I think that's what you'll have to do, is decide what your process is going to be at your next meeting, and to just talk through, this is a part of your board retreat. It's one of the action steps that you came away with from the board retreat with Dr. Deweese. And so I think that you won't be able to complete this in a board meeting, but you could at least identify what the process is and who will be helping to lift on those pieces and bring information back to the board.
So I wonder, would it be a good idea to start gathering information before that? Like, for instance, if we put together, I could put together a survey just saying, like, what do you see as a pivotal part of a job description, just to gather pre-information before that meeting? Would that make sense?
You also could reach out to VSBA, and you could ask for some examples of job descriptions from other organizations.
Which I did have.
Okay, so you have those from last time.
I have those. But as far as just kind of polling what the vision is for a superintendent, granted, well, yeah, we're a board in time, right?
Right.
But if you're thinking about what you would want, I can maybe just send out a survey just to get some ideas so that we have someplace to start with, maybe.
Yeah.
So we're not doing that at a retreat level.
I think the reason you landed here was when you went to write my evaluation, you recognized how long it had been since that had been revised.
It was antiquated, to say the least.
Another board in time.
Another board, exactly, a long time. Exactly. So maybe just to kind of, we all, I don't know about we all, I guess I'm speaking again for myself, that the 3 hours can go quickly and slow at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if we have maybe some ideas to jump off from, it might help start the conversation. So I would be happy to do that.
Great, thanks, Polly. That's great. All right, so we have a meeting September 15th, and any other things anyone would like to discuss before I make a motion to adjourn?
I don't believe so.
All right, thank you all so much. Appreciate it. So motion to adjourn, all in favor, just give me a thumbs up.
Aye. Or no. We're so used to virtual meetings.
I know. All right, well, we got cat version yet, but thank you so much, everyone. Take care.